presented by Ryan Horne, and he's a postdoc here at UNC with the Institute for the Arts and Humanities, part of the Carolina Digital Humanities Initiative, and also the History Department. He is formerly the director of UNC's Ancient World Mapping Center, and also he's a programmer and worked at Lockheed Martin as a programmer. So he is presenting on behalf of his two collaborators, Sarah Bond and Paul Dilley, and I don't know if they might be Skyping in. They will. Okay, great. His paper is entitled BAM, or BAM, BAM, Text Networks and GIS Mapping in the Big Ancient Mediterranean.
Collaborators are actually there. They are?
I saw a little pop up a minute ago.
Yeah. Coffee break.
Right on time, too.
There they are. All right.
Hello.
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 Hey! We can't quite see you yet.
Okay.
Well, we can see you.
Yep.
Oh, you can? Well, I guess that's the thing that's important. Okay, well, perhaps you guys will come up in just a second. I'm not sure.
Okay. While we're doing that, I seem to have accidentally closed this, so let's go forward. So re-sign into Dropbox. I just accidentally closed it. It's one of those days. You see us yet?
No.
Well, we can see you, Paul, and a baby, so.
Okay, great. Well, that's just so we're clear, that's Paul's child.
This is
That's
Sebastian. You will be an observer then.
All right, let me bring up our stuff. Well, I guess even if you can't see us, we'll just get started, and maybe we'll pop in at some point.
Right.
My
So you
fault.
should be able to see now. There we go. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So you should be able now to see half of the screen as a PowerPoint and then the other half us. Is this correct?
Well, let's see here. Yes, it is now.
Ryan's having
Okay.
a problem.
There we go. All right. Well, I'll do the very initial introduction. So I'm Ryan Horne. This is Sarah Bond and Paul Dilley and a small observer that we have. And our project is the Big Ancient Mediterranean. And this is an outgrowth of some of the work we've done here at the Ancient World Mapping Center and a lot of the work that's being done at Iowa in terms of looking at text and deep textual analysis, which Paul and Sarah will speak to more than I will. So what we'll do is that Paul and Sarah will go over both the history behind the project, the textual components of it, and how it's being used for pedagogy. And then I will get into the technical details. There will not be any code displayed, so you don't have to worry about that. So let's get started.
Great. Okay, let me switch over to the PowerPoint here. Okay. A substantial portion of the Gospel of Luke is dedicated to a travel narrative that recounts the progression of Jesus' itinerant ministry from Galilee to Judea, and ultimately into the city of Jerusalem. In Galilee alone, the cities of Capernaum, Nain, Chorazin, the Sea of Gennesaret, and Bethsaida are mentioned within the text, all alongside dozens of references to the disciples, townspeople, and officials with whom Jesus interacted. Like many ancient texts, Luke's Gospel relies in part on the audience's familiarity with the geography of the Eastern Mediterranean. However, contemporary readers generally lack such pivotal geographic awareness when engaging with these writings. Despite shifting demographics, digital tools now allow the restoration of spatial aptitude to readers, and to go even further, enhancing their engagement by visualizing the popular networks embedded within narratives. Digital facilitation of coordinated textual, geospatial, and network exploration allows a deeper reading of ancient texts that greatly contributes to research, popular engagement, and teaching. Over the past decade, and especially in the past 5 years, increased funding to the digital humanities has borne the fruit of numerous standalone digital projects and associated online resources. Greco-Roman antiquity, which draws on a strong tradition of computing humanities reaching back well before the spread of the internet, still enjoys a prominent role in this development, which is nonetheless dominated by English language sources. The infrastructure for bringing together the substantial number of digital resources related to the ancient Mediterranean world is now being constructed through the development of standards for linked open data, spurred on by the seminars of the Linked Ancient World Data Institute, LADI, held at NYU and Drake in 2012 and 2013. The Big Ancient Mediterranean, or BAM, project aims to leverage the growing body of linked ancient world data by aggregating it and offering a research portal through which textual, geospatial, and network data can be explored in a coordinated fashion. Sarah Bond, that's me, and Paul Dilley founded BAM in 2014, and lead developer Ryan Horne soon joined our team. After an initial planning phase, we undertook a 2-week organizational session at the University of Iowa's Obermann Center for Advanced Studies in 2015. This resulted in a prototype, most notably an interface that enables the synoptic exploration of the Gospel of Luke's text, its character networks, and its geographic references. This data is part of Terra Biblica, BAM's first module, or annotated data set. Another workshop will be held at the University of Iowa in June of 2016, at which various project representatives will share data and offer feedback on the interface. This presentation today will introduce BAM to the community of digital classicists and digital geographers there, in 3 parts: outlining its goals and functionality in the current digital humanities ecosystem, introducing its current interface as well as its software architecture, and exploring its potential as a pedagogical tool.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So some of the main aspects of BAM is actually trying to get together a number of disparate projects which offer one or the other type of information and make them all accessible to the user simultaneously so that they will be able to explore geospatial, network, and textual data at the same time and move back and forth between the two of them. So in a sense, it's an experiment. We're developing the user interface, and this is one aspect of it. Sarah mentioned we have our own modules, but as we move forward, what we'd like to do is leverage what I would say is probably the ancient world has, of all periods in digital humanities, the most developed linked open data infrastructure, and maybe the best hope of being the first group of digital humanists to really leverage all of what's out there. So we are hoping to leverage a number of the forms of linked open data that exist. The Ancient World Mapping Center in Pleiades, you know well. SNAP is a prosopographical project, which is working with people. Another main aspect of our project, of course. There's Periodo for chronology, Perseus for, among other things, authors. So we hope to aggregate the various types of linked open data, and not just actually Greek and Latin, but my own field of interest is late antique religion. And so also dealing with other languages related to Greek and Latin, like Aramaic, Syriac, Coptic. And so in the conference in June, we hope to begin the process of sharing this data and trying to figure out how BAM as an interface can best mesh with other projects. And so the way that we're planning to do this moving forward is to thinking of BAM, at least initially, as a series of modules or sets of corpora, which may be annotated slightly differently, but in one sense or another, Terra Biblica, for example, makes use of geospatial, network, and textual data that we've collected. So in talking about the big in big ancient Mediterranean, we mean that not necessarily in the sense of terabytes of data. We don't have that, at least yet, and we can never hope to compete even with our colleagues in medieval studies in the sheer amount of material that survives, although of course there is, once you start talking about material, then there's a tremendous amount from the ancient world as well. So the big, though, is our aim to coordinate 3 different types of data. This is one aspect of it. We are also using a macro perspective, which is seen for our purposes as a complement, so something which goes hand in hand with the sort of micro perspective that has been a feature of historiography over the past several decades. So to look at the Terra Biblica module, we can, for example, click on a particular biblical place and observe it as it develops in the literature over a period of a millennium and even more, once we start adding, for example, late antique pilgrim narratives. There's also the sense of big data using electronic Greek and Latin texts, which will soon be available, more on this in a second, for enhanced sort of algorithmic study. This is what's known as distant reading, as it's been developed, especially in the field of English literature. So doing things like topic modeling, which is discovering various sorts of themes in a large body of literature, and doing that algorithmically. So with a set of text that's simply too large for any one individual to handle, with a computer, they can, a set of themes can be tracked and placed among a large set of literature. And we hope to use that as part of our capability. So, for example, using a topic model, we might discover a discourse about the cult of saints and track that over time as it develops across networks of people, or, for example, from one place to another in the Mediterranean. So, a couple of words about the distant reading of ancient texts, just to give you a sense of the developing landscape and what we're dealing with as we move forward. So we can't use, for many early Christian texts, which will be included in Terra Biblica, we can't actually use any currently available open source versions of that text. They exist, of course, in the TLG, which not only is a paywall, that's not an issue for us in our institutions, we can use it, but we hope to make Terra Biblica and BAM open access for everybody. But there's the broader licensing issue. So TLG does not give you a license to use the full text. All you can do for it is a keyword search, which I argue elsewhere is what Greg Crane calls a type of incunabular reading. So it's kind of repeating the function of print sensibility, in this case the index. So even advanced keyword searches are arguably like that. So what I'm saying is you can't use the TLG, which is the only electronic text of much early Christian literature that's out there, in BAM, in Terra Biblica, and that means we can't have these distant reading functions like topic models. So what we're waiting on and working in tandem with the Open Philology project, which is run by Greg Crane out of Leipzig and also Tufts, and this will provide in the next, I'm not sure what the precise time frame is, but in the next coming years, gradually the sort of open access Greek and Latin texts, which can get incorporated into our system. And the New Testament, which we're focusing our efforts on now, is available. So some texts are available open source, but not all of them. So I'm going to pass it over to Sarah now. Thank you.
Great. So now that we've gotten a little bit of a rundown on what BAM exactly is, I want to talk to you a little bit about pedagogy and the purpose behind BAM in terms of the classroom. Much like the writers of the Gospels, principal investigators of a successful digital humanities project must actively think about, develop, and anticipate the reactions of a wide range of digital audiences. One of the aims of BAM is to function as a prism that makes ancient texts and their analysis more accessible to users coming from diverse backgrounds. That is to say that BAM targets professionals within the field of classics and non-professionals outside of academia. This is in part an attempt to address the disciplinary silos that, as Stephen Breyer has pointed out, often make pedagogy an afterthought in the planning of DH projects. Although the research potential for BAM is a high priority, public consumption and student engagement are also founding objectives of the project. From the beginning, BAM was conceived as a digital project that could serve to enhance learning and engagement, not solely an intellectual research tool. This is particularly due to the fact that Paul and I specialize in the late antique Mediterranean. Academics engaged in the study of late antiquity and early Christianity in particular are keenly aware of the public interest in patristic texts and of the fact that the Bible, which will provide a number of foundational texts within BAM's Terra Biblical module, is, well, the best-selling book of all time. The maps provided by BAM are an additional pedagogical tool available for use by teachers at all levels. Professors will be able to insert them into their lectures, but they are also useful representations for those teaching outside of the academy. For example, high school teachers or clergy who wish to add a digital component to their church's Bible studies. The emphasis lies in understanding that spatial and network awareness give an added depth to all reading. Understanding the distance and terrain between cities within the Mediterranean, for instance, can help students to better understand how arduous it must have been for Tiberius to cover the 200 miles to Germany to visit his ailing brother Drusus in just one day. Equally, students come to understand the creation and spread of early Christian networks while following Paul's numerous missionary journeys around the Mediterranean. Maps can be pulled up and used in any browser or screenshot and inserted into PowerPoints. Just like Antiquity a la carte, users can also download the data as a KML, JSON, or CSV file in order to visualize data in other mapping programs such as Google Earth or within Mapbox. Much like any good classroom discussion section, BAM functions not as a monologue, but as a dialogue. It goes beyond the simple interface to serve as a repository that encourages students, researchers, and non-academics to upload their own data and use its geospatial and network tools for their own purposes. Just as the Pleiades project has encouraged students and the public to interact with, review, and contribute to over 35,000 geospatial points housed within the project's gazetteer. And you can see here a screenshot of my students using Antiquity a la carte to build their own maps of Spartacus or the Third Servile War. BAM invites all users to set up their own modules that they can return to at a later date. This sharing of information constitutes a transparent exchange that fosters relationships with the users and contributes to the spirit of linked open data. The hope is that professors can begin their own modules with their students, begin to toponym tag texts that they are interested in, and then find the matching Pleiades ID numbers. Facilitating student projects that build maps with accompanying text and social networks encourages students not only to consume textual analyses, but to engineer their own. So that's a little bit about the pedagogy and the overview of BAM, and now I want to hand it over to Ryan Horne so he can talk to you a little bit about the development and the actual construction of BAM's interface.
I realize I'm the only thing between you and lunch, so we will try to go through this fairly quickly. All right. So,
you may want to ask Sarah if she
yeah,
can mute her
can you mute us
microphone.
temporarily?
Sorry?
Can you mute us temporarily because I'm getting some feedback? Thanks. So, we've gone through a bunch of that. So let's go with what BAM is. We talked about a little bit about the modular idea. So we have basically a code base, which is a big all-encompassing code base that you can change up depending on what your project is. So if you want to show just social network, you can do that. If you want to show just a map, you can do that. If you just want to go through text, or if you want to combine them all together in whatever combination you want. And so that's a major goal of our project. Now, how do we accomplish this? Well, this is a little history cloud, so we'll go through a little bit of history. If you have the misfortune of reading my dissertation, it is on garrisons and garrison commanders in the Greek world. And what I did when I was developing this was to actually map all mentions of, I was interested in Furarkoi specifically, that's one of the garrison titles. And so I went through all Furoi, Fura, and Furarkoi, and all Greek texts. There's none in Homer, so I had to start at Herodotus and ended at Cassius Dio. That's a lot of text, that's a lot of literature, that's a lot of inscriptions, and then I mapped them all. And there you have it. And I'll show you the interactive map in a second. And also, well, it's tabular, right? It's where these things are, who they are, and associating them with Pleiades IDs, and then quantifying them. So we can see a map here, and you can see the little program that comes up. And this is all generously hosted by the Ancient World Mapping Center, so thank you for not turning off my server access yet. And here they all are. All the garrisons are in orange, all the garrison commanders are in white. And this is a very effective way of showing, well, the garrison commanders, when we talk about them, are in certain areas, and they're in areas where actually there's not a whole lot of other garrisons going on. So this little application, you can go, you can click on, you can navigate, you can bring up who's where, you can search for, in the entire database, all 1,620 entries of these people. And so this is the code base I started with. And it's built off of Antiquity a la carte and the actual new map tiles that we have at the Ancient World Mapping Center. As far as we know, these are the world's only geographically accurate, publicly accessible map tiles. So if you're using things like Google Earth, please use ours. Spain is actually accurate. So that was where the code base itself started. So then the first idea for Terra Biblica and for BAM was to show, well, a social network, a map, and a text. And now these are three discrete units, right? Now they communicate with each other. Like if we click on the center of the network in Luke, it is probably unsurprising to everyone in this room, Jesus. Click on that, it'll show you, the map will change to show you where he's at, how many times it takes place. And you can click on those and bring up a nice, again, tabular data, which will show you where it is, like Luke 24:52. Click on that, and there's your text. And the text, in this case, is coming from Perseus. So we are pulling all this stuff together, but one of the problems here is that these are still discrete entities. You have a network, but it's really difficult when you're looking at network analysis, and you're looking at these things to see, well, where is the network in geography, right? It's kind of free-floating, it's out there. So the next thing to do, and this is something that's a little more difficult, not a lot of people are doing, is to start making networks where social networks are in geography itself, where we have some fixed points, like we have locations, but we have a lot of people where are you going to put them? And I'll show you this. Well, the test data was, again, my dissertation data, and these are the commanders. And it'll get this wonderful little animation of all these people bouncing around. Well, and it'd be a little bit faster, but I think we're pulling in a lot of stuff with Skype at the moment. But what this does show you is the fixed locations remain fixed, and the people, the things that it's really difficult to say where is someone, they'll actually bounce around for the different places. Like one of the arguments I have is that there's people in between Rhodes and Knidos, and the system keeps moving those people between them. So you'll see that they don't really belong in Rhodes, they don't really belong in Knidos, but we can show that they're kind of hovering around this area. And so the nice thing about this is this is just data from Gephi. And so it's getting that data to talk to a map, which we were able to accomplish. And so this was, again, the garrison people. Let me close a little bit of this so we have a little faster reactions. And we can do this now for BAM. And this giant spaghetti ball of doom that you'll see appear on the screen in a moment is the social network of Luke. And it's people who aren't located. So the white dots are locations. Those are things we know where they are. And what the program does, and it's generally a lot faster than this, I'm going to blame the Skype and probably an outdated browser, is that it will say, well, where is somebody? Where are their connections between different places? And start moving those people and that social network closer to those places. And again, these are all things without geodata. If you look at how most people right now are doing social networks and putting social networks in geography, it's based on things like, your cell phone, geotagging, Facebook, this kind of stuff. Unless Ancient Aliens is correct, we don't have that in the ancient world. So what we'll do is say, well, here's a mention of a person, here's a mention of a garrison commander, here's where they are in a social network and where we can connect that network to a specific place. It'll start influencing how we'll actually display that. And these are all different modules that we can put in the BAM. The nice thing is, after going through all of that development, I want to show you something that I just threw together, more or less for this presentation. We'll call it a hostility network. This is a network of garrisons, and the red lines being hostile, blue lines being the ownership over them, and Thucydides. And these, again, are not all garrisons. These are just Fura, Furarchoi, that kind of thing. If you want to talk about the Greek terminology, I will eventually go through and find all garrisons of all different words in Thucydides. But that's a different project when I have a little more time. And so what I did is I put it in the Gephi. We made our little connections and mapped it. Now, the different colors are the community detection algorithm in Gephi. So it looks and says, how many connections do you have between each thing? So there's a community centered on Athens, unsurprising. Sparta, well, again, this is fairly obvious for everyone in this room, right? But then we have other interesting communities, like they say, Megra, Corinth. There's a lot of connections here. Peloponnesian forces, they form a community on their own. Messenia, Syracuse. And so, again, we can see all this stuff. And then if we put it into BAM, which we do here, a much smaller spaghetti ball of doom, because I only have a couple of people. Thucydides doesn't really name garrison commanders very often, so these guys are here. And if we zoom in, you can start seeing these communities actually conform to geography. And again, this isn't a surprise for anyone looking at Thucydides. We've had this book around for a while now. But if we're looking at other data sets and different kinds of data that we don't study as well as Thucydides, what we can do is do our community detection. We can do our networks, and then this only took 5 minutes to export out in BAM. We can put it on geography and see, wow, where do these things map up? Like, do we have, like, here, a geographic split between Athens and Sparta? Can we do that for maybe some inscriptions or for a different corpora of text? And this is something where, as long as you match it, you can put it in, you can do the community detection, BAM will put it all up for you. And if it's open source text, if you can get it from Perseus or from other sources, you can have the text, you can look at the navigation, and you can do fun things like, again, let's look at Athens, all the hostilities going over. Well, there's a lot of hostility to Sicily. Again, not a surprise here. And if we click on our friends the Spartans, there's hostility everywhere. So these are the kind of things that you can use BAM for just different questions, different data sets. And we're really trying to push forward, like, again, we're talking a lot about helping each other from, as Tom was saying last night. This is what we're trying to do with this, to make a program where we can actually grab different data sets, where we can put stuff in with, again, minimal stuff. We don't want people learning JavaScript to use BAM. All you need to do is just drop into CSV and you're ready to go. So that's pretty much our objective. And with that, we're on mute, but you can turn on the volume. We will open it up for any questions.